Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. Doing a little bit of a midweek video since the content gods have been super kind to us and shined upon us once again and blessed us with a couple of great offerings as far as news stories are concerned. The focus of this video is going to be mainly on the whole a little bit about the Marx Cards update. Not very much on it, to be honest. I'm going to be very light on that because obviously things are developing and there's a lot more conversation to be had on that. And things are going to be taking some time, I think, to move. So I will touch on it really, really briefly. And part of the reason for that is going to be what you're seeing on the screen there. So I had my first opportunity to pop on the Neo Cards and Comics channel. I'll include a link to the description in it. I come about maybe about the halfway point. So you got Dakota, Sports Card Anonymous there as well. So we all have a fun little chat talking about this and a few other things definitely on it. So I was able to make my first appearance on a live stream of ill repute of another channel. So I'll include a link to that in the description if you want to check it out. But specifically, I want to focus in on that first topic as far as that's concerned. And my resource here that I'm going to use is going to be Paul Lesko, who, when it comes to anything legal in the hobby, that's one of the resources that I'll look for. Jay, who's been on the live stream, of course, as well, and is a lawyer, was able to give some insight on the live stream. So if you're interested in some takes on there as well, Jay was kind enough to give us a little bit of information on the live stream in addition to before I got on there. Now, specifically as pertains to this, the long story short of this really comes down to this specific thing. And there's not a lot to it, so I'm going to read it as is, but it's going to be there on the screen in front of you. So hello, everyone. On April 12, 2022, the bankruptcy court denied PSA's request for authority to implement a process to return the cards to the rightful owners and suggested the PSA file a separate request. We ask for your continued patience as PSA is working with counsel to determine what action needs to be taken to address the court's most recent ruling so that it can return cards in its possession. So this pertains to the whole Marx Cards thing where they went bankrupt and thus put a lot of these cards that PSA has in its possession into limbo where they can't just return them to the people that sent them in. Because right now there's a little bit of a determination of who actually has custody, how does this play into the whole bankruptcy proceeding, what has to be done with it. There's a lot more to go through before this is all said and done, and a lot of it is going to be based on the lawyers having arguments over these different components of it, whether a judge want to make a precedent. There's a lot of moving parts. The potential for impact is huge, but at the moment, anything beyond simply saying that is pure speculation because there's a lot of steps, I think, between now and then. As PSA says in this little brief statement here, right now it's the process of looking at legal options. Now, I will say that if you go through the timeline here, there are a couple of pieces of information provided. So let me scroll up to the more recent stuff. So this one here, Paul Lesko says, I call this the nuclear option. So I'll read it to you, but this would be kind of an extreme example here. So this is, again, different lawyers debating different elements of this. This is kind of what lawyers do. They're arguing about it, but I'll give it to you anyway, just for your understanding. Don't take this as anything more than what it is. So the problems may not be PSAs to return. Technically, the assets of the debtor, even if they're held for others, become part of the bankruptcy court estate. I don't know what BK stands for, but I'm going to say bankruptcy estate. Unless the bailor filed a UCC1 with the state of California establishing that the items are theirs, PSA may not hear from the BK trustee demanding that it turn over all of its cards. They would then be sold and the proceeds would be used to pay creditors in the order with the bailors treated as unsecured last in line unless UCC was filed. Again, we don't know. There's a lot of missing components to it. But as Lesko says here, that would be like the nuclear option. That would be like a worst case scenario. Obviously, we got a lot of memes involved in this. So anyway, the bottom line with this overall is that it is an update. But obviously, it's an update that leaves open as many questions as it answers. Doesn't answer very much and leaves even more questions than what we started with. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with it. Obviously, there are a lot of implications and potential implications down the line, but it is too soon to comment on any of them at this time, and it would be inappropriate. But it doesn't mean that we can't at least state that there has been an update on it, and that's kind of where we stand at this moment. Now, sticking to the theme of third-party graders, I do want to talk about a little bit more because HGA as well had an update of their own. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about this, and then I'll finish up with some thoughts on kind of the state of third-party grading as it stands right now. Not an overall state on a third-party grader by third-party grader basis, but kind of some general thoughts that I want to put out there as far as that's concerned. Now, really important qualifier. I wanted to start off with the whole segment there about the Marx Cards thing, since that's the only update we've really got. So I wanted to make sure we talked about that. But I want to make a quick point on this. Whenever I do one of these videos talking about third-party graders, I say it an infinite number of times on the live stream, Fridays, 9 p.m. Eastern time. But I'm going to repeat it here one more time on the video itself, just to make sure we're all on the same page. I am never going to recommend to anybody any third-party grader. It is really up to you. I can give pieces of information like anybody else as far as what my preferences are, what I see as benefits, pluses and minuses of the different third-party graders. But the other piece I would say is that if it's something where it doesn't have value to you, as a collector, you don't really need it. So I always lead off with, you don't need third-party grading necessarily. It does have some uses and utilities. If you are planning on selling a card, it can make it more liquid, but there are times where the math doesn't add up. And if that's the case, then you can certainly stay away from it. So, before the person comes in going like, oh, I hate third party grading, that's great. That's fine. I lead with the premise that you don't need third party grading, but if you are going to bother with it and you're going to pay for it, then it becomes a value proposition depending on what the third party grader is providing you that is of value to you. And that is going to be a very personal thing, and I can't tell you what's better or worse. I can give you only my opinions. Now, that said, let's talk about HGA here for a second. So specifically, this came out yet a couple of days ago, and they wanted to communicate that there were some changes. Tyler Hitt is going to be stepping away from HGA. That's the way they phrase it. So let me read you the statement here, and I'll give some thoughts on it. HGA was his dream, and the company wouldn't be where it is today without his knowledge and love of the industry. Although we are sad to see Tyler go, he will still be part of our HGA family, and we work diligently to make his vision a success. HGA is now in the capable hands of Armstrong International, founded in 1900, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. The HGA management team who's been driving operations will continue to do so with support from ownership. We have added a resource who brings over 17 years of experience running companies and developing operational excellences. HGA is committed to its mission of providing customers with innovative grading services. We will continue to communicate updates on the progress of our backlog, along with optimizing our operations for more efficiency gains. Thank you for trusting HGA with your sports and TCG cards grading needs. Okay. And obviously there were a lot of comments and thoughts on this when this came out. Look, here's the bottom line. This is the way I'm going to phrase it, and this is kind of going to lead me into the last portion of this video. And obviously I can talk about it more later on if that's if there's any value to that. The bottom line of it is this, is that from what I've had the chance to see, and I've had a lot of fun on this channel, I'm not going to deny it, I've had a lot of fun on this channel at HGA's expense because they've done a lot of really questionable and weird things. But with that said, the fact of the matter is, I have seen very little to indicate to me that HGA was ever really serious as a player in the market. And my opinion, and I stand by it, I said it on the live stream that I talked about at the beginning on Neo's channel tonight that I'm recording this, but I'm going to repeat it here again on my own video. I don't see the value in looking at second and third tier graders unless you really, really want a fancy holder. And if that's the case, then by all means, have at it. Go back to my original qualifier. You don't need third-party grading. And if you have your heart set on one specific third-party grader at the expense of all the other ones, no matter what, well, then by all means, far be it from me to stop you. But I'm going to say that if you are going to bother with it and you are trying to get some value out of it, not even resale value, I just mean there's a reason for you to give them money to even put it in the fancy holder, I wouldn't be looking at second and third tier ones. A lot of what made HGA work was the timing at which it came out. It saw an opening in the market where PSA was struggling and they kind of had to shut their doors and they tried to create an alternative. But the truth is, and this is why I say, in my opinion, it was silly that HGA was a thing to begin with, is there are alternatives. And I believe there are enough alternatives, enough legitimate alternatives that if you hate PSA, no problem. I have a thing called SGC. They've been around for over 20 years. The CEO of SGC, Peter from SGC, who's been around, if you've listened to interviews on it, he seems like a nice enough guy. He's well-spoken. He's said a lot of things. Is SGC the first third-party grader that I look for? No, it isn't. Would I hesitate to buy one of their cards in their holders? Certainly not. I have been more than happy to in the past and will do so again in the future. To me, they are a legitimate third-party grader. Again, if you don't like PSA, SGC is a very viable option. BGS is a viable option. They've done a lot to hurt their own reputation, but at least they have some market cachet. And CSG has done a lot of changes. They're obviously the newest player of the four that I just described. However, they've made some inroads. They've graded over 700,000 cards. The holder, I think, is excellent. The change to make the label more streamlined, a little bit less polarizing, in my opinion, is a good move. Will that help their secondary market value? I genuinely don't know, but it couldn't hurt. So it's one of those things that, in my opinion, between those four different third-party graders, you have tens and tens of millions of cards graded over the past year, years, in some cases, decades. That is enough of, considering they have the overwhelming sense of the market share. That's why I don't see too much value in looking into the HGAs of the world. In Canada, we've got KSA and we've got MNT. Why waste, sometimes I'll have it brought up on the live stream and I'm like, guys, why? Why would you waste my time with this? The fact of the matter is you might like it. And by all means, and I'm not going to discourage you from buying cards in those holders because there could very well be good cards in those holders. But when you stray further and further and further away from the first tier, you're basically taking it into your own hands. At that point, I wouldn't pay any premium beyond the raw card graded price because in my opinion, I'm buying a raw card in a holder and I might have to be taking it out of that holder. And again, for those people that don't like third-party grading, they might be more than willing to take one of the quote-unquote 4 third-party graders that I have mentioned already today, and maybe they would crack it out and just have the card raw. Again, as a collector, if you're talking about collecting, do whatever you want. You want to put it in a one touch, do that. Put it in a top loader, awesome. Do it in album pages, fantastic. A Z folio, have at it. But if you are going to venture into third party grading realm, in my opinion, it is best to stick with one of the four. If for no other reason, then at least there's some recourse, at least there's some security. And even if there is management change, which there was at PSA, it is management change with a group of folks whose goal it is to actually build a brand and make it bigger. Again, when Nat Turner and that group purchased that company, they didn't buy PSA. They bought Collectors Universe, which in turn owns PSA, but they've got an overall company to look out for. Their goal is to make money at the end of the day, like any other business. However, they're investing some of that money in trying to improve processes and doing those things. It might not be to your satisfaction. Well, then I point you to SGC, I point you to BGS, or I point you to CSG. That is four legitimate options, and it is better for us as the collecting whole if all four of those legitimate options are able to compete with each other and hopefully force competition is able to make them better. And if it makes it better for us, then we get better prices, more competitive, better turnaround times, all those good things that you hope for. And we don't have to rely on these second and third tier ones that try to promise us this and then end up being a disorganized mess at best and other things that I'll leave out of this conversation at worst. The bottom line is when it came to HGA and this whole situation, I had heard enough from people whose opinions I respect, who had some dealings with HGA and Tyler Hitt when he was running the company, when they were doing better, that told me that the likelihood that we were going to end up somewhere like this was very high. I have no doubt this new company is going to make a sincere effort to try to fix it. I'm not going to speculate on the exact arrangement. I genuinely don't think that Tyler Hitt made out like a bandit on this. I think it was a money loser towards the tail end, and I think he got out at probably the right time. And I think the company probably was more than willing to let him go, if you understand if you can read between the lines of what I'm saying. But anything beyond that is speculation. That's just my guess. That's just my opinion based on the way this played out and based on what I have seen and heard from what's been going out of HGA during this time. It never seemed like it was run well as a company. It seemed like everything was a slap hazard, kind of a Band-Aid solution on a Band-Aid solution on a Band-Aid solution. The one thing I will say that I feel like they did well was that they initially tried that queue system. And I actually think PSA has started to borrow a similar kind of queue system. Some people may like it, some people may not, but I think it is going to stay for certain tiers and levels going forward in the future. So in that sense, I suppose that can be HGA's legacy, so to speak. But honestly, I would prefer it, in my opinion, if this hopefully is the last we hear of HGA. I really don't see any long-term value in keeping them around, but that's really up to individuals. You all got to do what you got to do, and if that's what you want to do and you just need a fancy label, by all means, I can't stop you. So kind of the current state of it on third-party grading, I'm okay with seeing this change happen here. Hopefully that pushes them back into the background. Maybe they're able to recover. Maybe they're able to do better. Who knows? There's always an opportunity for a comeback story. But otherwise, I'm quite content to move forward with PSA, SGC, CSG, and BGS in whatever order you see fit that you feel is appropriate for yourself, your collection, and anything else. Anyway, that's it for me right now. I welcome any thoughts or comments you might have on this topic. You're welcome that I have completely avoided the wrestling topic, so I let you guys off the hook after my trilogy. Otherwise, it'll be more videos coming up on the channel, and then we'll do on the live streams Friday, 9 p.m., where we'll talk about this or anything else you want to talk about as far as that's concerned, or anything else the chat has in mind. Other than that, enjoy the rest of your week. Friday is going to be a holiday, but I will still be doing the live stream as normal. Otherwise, hopefully your long weekend, if you have it, is good. Otherwise, we'll catch you in the next one.